Welcome to the Nervous System Diaries. I'm a soft-spoken survivor. Diary entry number 4. A house but not a home. Today I want to talk about something many survivors understand all too well. The difference between having a house and having a home. After the custody battles ended, life seemed to settle down on the surface. I was back in school, trying to be a normal kid, but underneath everything, there was still a lot of instability. My biological father was still a part of my life then. Every other week, he would pick me up for visits. Looking back, I realized his drinking had gotten much worse. One weekend, I climbed into his car and immediately smelled beer. Country music blasted through these speakers so loudly I could feel the vase vibrating my body. I remember watching him take drinks while he drove. At some point during the drive, the car slowly drifted toward the shoulder of the road. I remember staring at the trees and feeling a panic rise in my chest. I made some sort of sound, a gasp, a yelp, a warning. "Daddy, watch out!" He jerked the wheel, corrected the car, and turned the music down. Then he looked over at me and said, "We're okay," as if nothing happened, as if I hadn't just been terrified, as if my fear didn't exist. Years later, I realized how often that happened in my life. Adults would create chaos, children would carry the fear, and then everyone would pretend nothing happened. Not long after that, I accidentally told my mother that he had been drinking and driving. To this day, I don't know exactly what happened after that conversation, but what I do know is that he never came to pick me up again. There was no goodbye, no explanation, no final conversation. One day he was part of my life, the next day he wasn't. I waited and waited and waited. I remember watching for him. I remember hoping. I remember believing that maybe he was just running late, but he never came. Sometimes abandonment isn't someone walking out dramatically. Sometimes it's a child sitting quietly hoping someone will show up, and they never do. Life went on, but something inside me has changed. I learned very early that I shouldn't need too much. I learned to expect less. I learned how to go without. My clothes came from garage sales, and they weren't always clothes picked for girls. I can still hear the words that echoed through my childhood. "Your dad doesn't pay child support. Your brother's dad does. He gets more because I have more money to spend on him." As a child, I accepted that explanation. As an adult, those words still sting. Because what I heard wasn't a conversation about money. What I heard was that I mattered less. At the same time, I watched my brothers receive things I didn't, like new clothes, new shoes, new toys. I wasn't jealous of him. I just couldn't understand why I seemed to be less deserving. How can you love one child more than the other? I spent a lot of time believing that if I was perfect enough, helpful enough, quiet enough, maybe I would finally be worthy of the same love everyone else seemed to be receiving naturally. I remember being given a 15-minute time limit to talk about my day when my mother got home from work. 15 minutes. That's all that was allowed. Like I was a burden or something. After that, I was expected to disappear into the background. I became good at surviving. I became good at needing very little. I became good at convincing myself I was fine. One of the bright spots in my childhood was my great-grandmother. When my brother visited his dad, I was often sent to stay with her. At this time, it felt like I was being dropped off somewhere. As an adult, I see it differently. She loved me. She taught me about flowers, like the names, and how to deadhead flowers and save the seeds, and which ones were weeds and which ones were actually flowers. And I'll never forget the time she said, "Wow, that dahlia's as big as a baby's head." So every time I have dahlias growing in my garden, I think of her. She also taught me how to cook. She taught me how to care for things. In a childhood filled with instability, she gave me small moments of peace, moments that still live inside of me today. Kind of like how I like to color my hair. I used to color her hair. She always had this purple rinse to put on her hair because she had gray hair. And it would almost leave like a tint to her hair. And that was fun for me. I loved it. It was such a good bonding time. But even those moments couldn't last forever. As I got older, things became more complicated. My mother remarried for a third time. And at first, in a long time, I felt hopeful. I absolutely adored my new stepdad. He loved camping, family game nights, cooking dinner. He was kind. He was steady. He was everything I thought our family had been missing. For a little while, I believed we might finally be happy. Then things started to change. Our neighbors installed a swimming pool, and during the summer we spent a lot of time over there. What should have been fun often felt uncomfortable instead. The adults drank heavily. Boundaries seemed to be blurry. Things that happened made me deeply uncomfortable as a teenager. Like my bathing suit top being untied. Not only mine, the adult women too. But for a child, a teenager, uncomfortable in her body already, it was just too much for me. I remember feeling like I was the only person who thought any of it was strange. If I spoke up, I was told I could leave. So I learned to stay quiet and observe. Looking back now, I can see things I didn't fully understand then. I witnessed the cracks forming in another marriage. I watched my stepdad slowly withdraw. I remember feeling confused as my family's stability I had hoped for began to slip away again. By the age of 15, I was told I needed a job to help teach independence and help pay the bills. At the time, I thought this was normal, so I got a job. And I handed over part of my paycheck every week for rent. I paid rent before I was even old enough to drive. My mother had opened a checking account for me, but her name was on it too. I couldn't do anything with my own money unless she was there to sign for it. Then one day, the money I had set aside for rent disappeared. I had put a cash and a partial check out where she told me to put it. But suddenly it was gone, and I was told I hadn't paid. I was called into the kitchen and given an ultimatum. Pay the rent or leave. I was 16 years old. I remember feeling completely blindsided. Not because the money was gone, but because my own mother was willing to throw me away over it. So I left. And what happened next changed my life. A friend of mine from high school's family took me in. They already had children of their own, but somehow they found room for me too. For the first time in my life, I experienced what a family should be. Not perfection, not wealth, not fancy things, just love. When I got sick, someone brought me soup. When I needed a doctor, someone made an appointment. I had my own room. I was cared for. I was wanted. And that was completely foreign to me. I didn't realize how hungry I had been for love until someone finally gave it to me. The hardest part is that they wanted me to stay. They even asked if they could adopt me. Imagine hearing that after spending your years unwanted. Imagine someone looking at you and saying, "We choose you." My heart soared. For the first time, I could picture a future that felt safe. A future that felt normal. A future that felt like home. But it wasn't meant to be. They contacted my mother and asked if they could keep me. The answer was no, of course. Because, I was a paycheck to her. And that meant relinquishing her rights and no tax break. So just like that, I was sent back. Back to the place I had been trying to escape. Back to the place where I've never truly felt wanted. The emptiness that followed is difficult to describe. It felt like a dark cloak wrapped around me. The life I had started to build disappeared overnight. Looking back now, I realized this chapter of my life wasn't really about moving from house to house. It was about searching for a home. Because home isn't walls. It isn't furniture. It isn't an address. Home is where you feel safe. Home is where you're wanted. Home is where someone notices when you're hurting. Home is where you don't have to earn your place. As a child, I spent years searching for that. As a teenager, I kept searching for it. And if I'm honest, I spent a good portion of my adulthood searching for it too. The little girl I was thought home was a place. The woman I am now understands that home is something much deeper than that. And maybe that's part of healing. Learning that safety, love, and belonging you've searched for your whole life can finally start within yourself. Thank you for being here today. I'm a soft-spoken survivor, and this has been another entry from the Nervous System Diaries. Thank you so much for being here. Like, share, and subscribe.